But it's a sense of self-superiority that's causing them to do that. That no form of narcissism they all have a basis of insecurity. And that's why they're grandiose, and that's why they're the greatest victim you've ever seen in your life, and everything's worse for them and all those kind of things, depending on where they are on the spectrum. But underneath all narcissism is this extreme sense of insecurity, and how they play out and how they operate is trying to cover that insecurity.
Insight and awareness, spiritual explorer. Soul intuitive, emotional and spiritual mentor and award-winning author, Lorraine Nylon.
Welcome explorers, and thank you for being part of the adventure. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to know more about reconnecting to your soul, recovering from your wounds, and rejuvenating your zest for life, because that's what our podcast guests and myself are all about. And today you've got me. And I got an email from Chris, and I'm not sure if it's a he or a she, has asked me why I have got information about narcissism on a Spiritual Explorer podcast. And I thought that was a really good question. And the answer is sort of in my catch cry of reconnect, recover, and rejuvenate. Spirituality to me is about really understanding who you are and coming to terms with your history and dealing with whatever is causing you to feel less than, unlovable, unworthy, because that's not who you are. And on a soul level, you know that. I'll give you a bit of a history lesson on me, is that when I first started working in the spiritual realm and started using my skills as a soul intuitive, I got a lot of clients that came in and they were all childhood abuse victims. So for 12 years, I would document these themes that I'd see on people. And what I realized was that the pedophile that was abusing the children were so indifferent to the damage that they were causing that person, that child, that soul. And as I started to delve more and more into childhood abuse, I come to a very big understanding of the reality of indifference. We're all susceptible to others' indifference to us. So when someone's judging you, putting you down, condescending remarks, all those kind of things, or even just the sneer, we internalize that. And then we wonder why someone would do that to us. Is there something wrong with me? Am I unlovable? Am I unworthy of their respect? And we turn that on ourselves. Now, we're always trying to create safety and harmony and be liked and accepted into the herd. So those kind of things really impact us. The information that I learned from the abuse victims, I then started to see in relationships. And then we started to have, more information about narcissism. So when I was growing up, we'd never heard that word. So when I was looking at it, I was sectioning everything off, manipulation, gaslighting, I was, condescending, judgment, control, people that were controlling. And I was looking at all the different components to abusers and people that were abusive in their relationships. Now, what I didn't realize is all those different components, which I were classing as forms of indifference and still do, I can see they're the basis for narcissism. Now, we talk about you can't call people narcissists because you haven't got a diagnosis, and you've got to have, I think the rule is 9 traits. But if you're living with someone that's got 7 of those traits, you're having a hard time. If you're living with someone with 2 of those traits, you're having a hard time. And narcissism is like on a spectrum. So depending on how indifferent you are to the people that you're having a relationship with or dealing with or engaging with, is also the amount of damage that these people can do. And I always call them destroyers. I see them destroy relationships. I see them destroy people's self-esteem. I see them destroy things that are flowing, things that are working well. They come in and they destroy it. And I had a client once, and she had a beautiful story, which I think just summed up why I call them destroyers. But she was she was standing on her veranda, and one of the neighbours come over while her husband was working on the car, and the neighbour was actually flirting and carrying on and you know putting it out there, let's just say. And what she said really upset her is that she was there. She was standing there 2 steps away from them, and neither of them cared that she was watching this unfold, and they were all pretending it was all innocent and all the rest of it, and this went on a couple of times, and she could see that her partner was, getting his ego stroked, and he was a narcissist, and this person was a narcissist that was coming in, and she was determined to destroy the family unit that this lady was in. So, and the joke is, she said, "I wish she had of." But she ended up calling this lady out and saying, "What are you doing?" Rah, 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 and called him out. And then because he was drinking buddies with her husband, that was what eventually pulled him in. It wasn't respect for her. It wasn't anything bar, okay, now people are seeing this, I'm going to get caught. So he stopped. And I said to her, "How did you feel?" And she said, "I felt this person had invaded my home and said, one way or another, I'm going to destroy it. But first I'm going into competition with you." And then she said, "I looked at my husband and he seemed to be like, yes, you're in competition and you're losing." And it was in that moment that she realized that for her, that her relationship was unfixable. So she was like, okay, this guy has absolutely no respect. There was a guest, Stephanie Sarrazin, and hers was, look for the activating event. And I love that statement. I've used it recently again, because there's always that moment where people realize that reality is very different to what they want it to be. And in spirituality and narcissism together, you are constantly coming up against your illusion and versus reality. And I know you've heard me talk of it before. So when you're really willing to be honest with yourself, which is what spirituality is all about, then you start to see the illusions that you're trying to create versus the reality that you're experiencing. And a lot of people that are in narcissistic relationships, whether that's partners, friendships, siblings, parents, children, anything, work colleagues, know that the narcissist is constantly trying to make the world fit their illusion. So for this lady, those two were happy creating their illusionary world and did not care who it was going to affect, what the reverberations were, because they arrogantly believed they were entitled to do whatever they wanted and that they could deal with the damage by just gaslighting their way out of it. But when you're on the receiving end and you see your reality, then part of the process of recovery is to actually really walk through that reality and own the truth of what you've contributed to the illusion, so that you can heal that part of yourself and also the reality of narcissism. So that's why narcissism comes up on my podcast, because people are really dealing with those kind of relationships. There are no form of abuse that is not got narcissistic traits in them. Everyone that is abusive, from pedophiles to someone bullying you as you walk past, or someone screaming at you because you road rage or any of those things, that is a display of narcissism. I am entitled and the world should work the way I say it works, and you're in the way. So, when we're looking at narcissism, and like I said, when I was researching and dealing with a lot of childhood abuse victims, the reality of indifference throws us, because if someone's angry at you, it will peter out, and then you'll potentially get to the core of what the problem was. Indifference, that doesn't happen. When people are indifferent to you, they don't feel that they need to explain their position to you. They don't feel you have the right to even question them. Actually, they're very retaliative if you do. So, indifference means that they really have no empathy for you. They do not care how their words and their actions are impacting you. They take what they want, they do what they want, they say what they want. It's intentional. No one's accidentally narcissistic. It's intentional, but they do actually feel very entitled. So if we look at the 9 traits that people talk about when they're talking about narcissism, and remember, it's on a spectrum, and that we can show, we can all be a little bit selfish at times, which is a narcissistic trait. We can all have a bit of vanity in us, which is a narcissistic trait. But if it's at a very low level, it's just part of human nature. And that's the reality, is we all have a bit of narcissism in us. It's when it is on the other end of the spectrum, or heading towards the other end of the spectrum, that you get abusive behavior. Narcissists are abusive. They all have their own form of abuse. So if we look at the 9 traits, we've got the grandiose, and they have this great sense of self-importance. And they're the ones you can pick. You see them. I'm the greatest, I'm better than you, I'm in competition, I win. Everybody looks at me when I walk in the door. I should have all the attention on me. You can see them, and we all know somebody that's a bit grandiose. So that's part of it, but it's not all of narcissism. So, and like I said, one of the other traits is to lack empathy. Just do not care about other people. They don't flinch unless it is going to improve their image or give them the attention. So they do things, and they can do quite generous things, but it's for the accolade. It's not because they feel compassion. It's not because they're operating from kindness. Then there's this self-superiority, and that also goes into a bit of the fantasy world. And you'll hear them say, I could have been a world-class golfer if I had the proper coach. I could have been, the number one basketball player, but, my school didn't run basketball, so I just didn't have a chance. And they also feel superior in how much they are a victim to everyone else not noticing how great they are. Now, some will say it outwardly, and some will hold that secret. You're all too stupid to realize how impressive I am. And they operate from there, and they have this real indignant sort of approach to, if you don't praise them, and then they feel like an absolute victim because not enough people are praising them. Generally, they can't pull it off anyway. You were never going to be the greatest golfer. You were never going to rise to the top of your field because you're too busy in your head and playing the victim. But it's a sense of self-superiority that's causing them to do that. That no form of narcissism they all have a basis of insecurity. And that's why they're grandiose, and that's why they're the greatest victim you've ever seen in your life, and everything's worse for them, and all those kind of things, depending on where they are on the spectrum. But underneath all narcissism is this extreme sense of insecurity, and how they play out and how they operate is trying to cover that insecurity. So if you have, a daughter-in-law, say, for argument's sake, that comes into your family and you can see that she's one of those destroyers and they've got this severe insecurity, they are going to be hyper vigilant. Everything you say, everything you do, every move you make, even if you're coming from kindness, they'll take it as criticism. And then there'll be a retaliative thing that comes after that. It may not be something that's on the surface, and so you get into these silent games where, they just don't invite you to something, or they stop talking to you without a reason, or they don't say, they go, "Oh, no, I've got no problem. What?" But they're the ones that are doing these little things that make you feel unwelcomed or uninvited, or that you're overstepping. So as you walk into the narcissist's world and as they're trying to come in and destroy, say if we could do the daughter-in-law thing, they're trying to destroy your relationship with your son or daughter, they're holding that as a way of determining that they are superior because they deprived you of something. So when you're looking at narcissism, they really like to deprive you of what they know you value. So most of us value our relationships, so they destroy them. Most of us value our family unit. So as the lady with the neighbor in the driveway, it was like she was prepared to destroy that family unit for her own sense of, I'm the best, even though the other person didn't know she'd just joined a competition. Because the innocent person, the victim in this, is always the last person to know what is actually happening because you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. You're operating from kindness and compassion, but they're operating from spitefulness, manipulation, control, judgment, and retaliation. And half the time you won't know what they're retaliating against. It's just a thought in their head. So there's a great sense of entitlement in it. So for the 9 traits, I sort of lost the plot there a bit. You've got grandiose, you've got the fantasy of having and deserving. I deserve the best. I should have the greatest. All that sort of stuff. Self-superiority and that extreme need for admiration and accolades and reward, basically. Then we have really exploitive behavior, which is where manipulation comes in, and which is gaslighting is manipulation. So if you're being gaslit, you're being manipulated. If you say the sky is blue and they're going, no, it's not really, it's a shade of grey. Okay, yeah, probably, yeah, I could agree with that. Yeah, it does have a bit of a grey look to it today. Oh, no, it's blue. What's wrong with you? That's an example of gaslighting. So they invite you in and they want you to align with what they're telling you. They're very contradictory, and you're left standing there going, what just happened? And that's one form of gaslighting. But they're really trying to demoralize your self-esteem and your understanding of reality. They want to take that, deprive it from you. So if you said to someone, we'll use this daughter-in-law again, oh, that was a bit nasty what you said, and I thought we'd be invited to the birthday party. Oh, but you were invited. You didn't return my text. Or, I tried to ring you and you didn't pick up. No, there's no message here. There is on my phone. I'm so innocent. I wouldn't do anything. And as they walk away, they're smirking because they enjoy their own slyness and they play games in their head, and you unwillingly have become part of their game. So they get you to drag you onto their merry-go-round of chaotic thoughts and behaviours, and then play the victim, play innocent. And when you're trying to keep harmony, especially in a family situation or in a work environment, you're trying to work out how to appease that person so that you can create harmony and safety and get things flowing. But narcissists, they like to swim upriver. They never swim with the flow of the river. And they do not change. They cannot change because they refuse to have self-awareness. They refuse to be honest, and they refuse to really take the time to see the impact and damage in the wake of their emotional and sometimes physical destruction. So one of the other traits is to lack empathy, which we've talked about. One of the big ones is that they operate from envy because they're so competitive. It's a silent competition. Sometimes you'll never even know they're doing it. It's not an above board. Like in sports, we have competition, but it's above board. I'm going to try and run faster than you. I'm going to try and run faster than you. Okay, you win. That means that I need to try a little harder. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So it's a healthy competition. With narcissists, it's not healthy. It's degrading. They're constantly degrading. So, sorry, a story come to my mind. There was somebody that had bought a new car, and they were sitting around, this family was sitting around the table, and I won't say the brand of the car, but the person said, "Oh, I wouldn't be caught dead in such and such brand of car." And it wasn't anything to do with the brand of the car that these people had bought. It was to do with, that's new, I'm envious, and now I'm going to deprive you of celebration and joy and excitement and all the rest of it. I'm going to tell you what you just bought is crap and shameful. I want you to feel shame, because if you're in shame and believing there's something wrong with you, or if you're in guilt, or if I make you feel humiliated, I now have control over how you feel about yourself. And for a narcissist, that's like gold. That is the reward for the effort that they're putting in. And we don't automatically see that this is orchestrated and controlled, and they're trying to rob you of your self-esteem. Anyone that's been in any form of narcissistic relationship will know that their self-esteem, their sense of self-worth, and that sense of being lovable will be smashed. And there's a rebuild that has to happen. There's a recovery process that has to happen. It surprises us how quick and how easy that can occur. Even the strongest person, if it is constant and sly, can sometimes demoralize their sense of self. So please don't beat yourself up if you've felt that way, because that's what narcissism does. Narcissism is a combination of things. It's not just one trait. And it is hard to explain to people that haven't experienced it, but it's a chipping away at your self-esteem. They will take what is important to you and they will look for ways to destroy it. There was a young girl once who was doing some photography, and her partner said, "They're not very good photos, are they?" That created a doubt. So this person's hobby, this young girl's hobby, she started to just drift away from it. When you look at her photos, they're beautiful. But the envy that her partner had, that you might outshine me, was enough for her to put down the camera. And it happened so slowly that 15 years later, when she was asked, did you, after her marriage to this person and then children and then realizing what she'd walked into. So when she was in her recovery process, she was asked in one of the workshops, did you have a hobby? Is there something that you enjoy, something that gives you pleasure? Because she had nothing left. There was no excitement for anything. She was a good mum, and she just concentrated on being a mum and working, but nothing for her. One of the ladies in the workshop said to her, did you have a hobby before him that you enjoyed? And you could see the light go on. And she went, I used to really like photography. Why don't you try that again? And she was like, but I'm no good. Who said that? Oh, your abuser said that. He robbed you of something that gave you pleasure. The first stripping away. And she said, oh, I actually get that now. So in that whole time, the 15 years that she was with him, she didn't realize that was the start. She did in the workshop. She said, that was the first criticism that I really took on board. And then they never stopped after that moment. It was criticism, criticism, criticism. And I went, he'd worked out the door that was going to crush that light within you. Now you've got to walk back through that door and turn it on. That's part of the recovery process, is you're turning that internal light on, which is the truth of your soul. And that's why recovery and spirituality work together. Not my version of spirituality, your version of spirituality, whatever it is that resonates with you. Spirituality is a very personal relationship you have with yourself and with wherever you deem we come from, and whatever makes you feel that there is purpose and meaningfulness to your life. Another thing to be very aware of with narcissists, they are quick and have intense anger because of that insecurity I was talking about before, and because anything you do that they're not expecting or anything that flags up the truth of their behavior is something they can't handle. Remember, they believe they are the orchestrator of your reality, and they want to dictate to you what you should believe of them. This is the greatest person you'll ever meet in your life. If that is true, why are you abusing me? Why are you putting me down? Why are you depriving me of normal human rights? Most people will find that they have been financially abused, emotionally abused, physically abused in narcissistic relationships, regardless of the form, and that you, the victim, have become what we refer to in Australia as the dog's body, the doormat, the person that they wipe their feet on and keep walking. They want you when they need something, when they deem that they want something. They don't want you for who you are. They don't see you. You are a pawn in the game that they play. And it is extremely hard to see that reality. It's hurtful and it crushes our spirit a bit that we believe that somebody we'd like to love or support or have a friendship with is willing to do that to us. So be aware of the victim of any type of narcissistic trait. You are not at fault. You are responding to what is basically unfathomable, because no one believes that someone would want to destroy another person, chip away, chip away, chip away. But that's exactly what happens in narcissistic relationships. They are very good at reading people. They'll ask you your deepest, darkest secrets so that they can use it against you later on. So be aware, be very careful what and who you say something to. If someone is, I call it the inner sanctum, make sure they're worthy of being in the inner sanctum. If they haven't proven that they can be trusted, then don't reveal all your secrets to them. If you reveal a secret to them and they scoff, laugh, or use it against you, that is a major red flag. Because people who care and see you in a vulnerable position, they don't attack you, they support you. Chris, I hope that answers your question. And I do think it's important that we realize that spirituality and recovery from whatever it is that has us walking with wounds goes hand in hand. So it's time to do Flip the Book, and I'm just going to take the second book because it's glaring at me. This is under chakra and aura system. When you deny the truth of your own unresolved emotions, you become willing to deny your energetic awareness. Every emotion, every soul has their own signature, frequency, vibration. Emotions have vibrations. Anything that's of truth has like a frequency, and it's in its natural flow is a frequency. So when you deny the truth of your own unresolved emotions and you don't do the recovery process, you become willing to deny your energetic awareness. We feel all this. One of our senses is to feel. Our intuition has a lot to do with what we feel. You program, condition, and indoctrinate yourself with your denial of the reality of your emotional reactions and responses to life. So emotional reactions are instant. We're not thinking about them, we're just doing. So it's emotions responding with emotions, basically. And responses means that we've considered, we've thought about it, where there's a reason behind, sometimes not a good reason, but there's a reason behind our response to something, right? So if it's got reason and we understand the reason, we know the motivation, it's a response. If we're just reactive, we generally don't know why. You may seek to hold another accountable for their unresolved emotions and actions while denying the reality of what you are doing to your own soul. I think that's important. And if anyone's journaling, I think a good question, if anyone's journaling, a really good question now is to ask yourself, what's my energetic awareness? And how much value do I put in it? I think the key point there for anyone that's had narcissistic abuse relationship is don't become just fixated on what the narcissist has done. Give yourself permission to explore, not with judgment, but with compassion, your reaction to the narcissist. And you are going to learn a lot of things. So if we go back in that story with the lady that came into her driveway and started flirting with her husband, she observed her reaction. And by doing that, she pulled the blind up on her own denial and started to really look. If we look at the daughter-in-law scenario, where they come in and start destroying the relationship, we'll just say for argument's sake it was with the lady's son, then all of a sudden her reaction to that is going to tell her a lot about it. Now, the trouble with narcissism is because it is built on indifference, you end up in a position you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because indifference has you where there is nowhere to go, because you have a line of decency, but someone of narcissistic traits, they don't. Their boundary of how far they'll go to be retaliative and attacking and sly and manipulative will keep going, because it's all about them winning the competition they've got in their head. You are not privy to that. So if you try to appease them, you'll never appease them enough. If you try to attack them and tell them exactly what you can see, they don't care. So you end up in that position of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And when you find yourself surrounded by that kind of indifference energy, the only place you can go is pull into the truth of yourself and respond from the truth of who you are. Be honest, and if you can, for the daughter-in-law story, is try to have a talk to the son. But if he is under the spell of a narcissist, he is not going to see it until he is completely burnt. And the narcissists will set up when they are in destroying positions because they like the triangulation. It is known that they love triangulation. They love that kind of competition. They are happy to utilize your honesty and use it against you so that the daughter-in-law and your son will become allies together and you will become the problem. So for the driveway story, the flirty girl and the husband become allies and you are the problem, the wife. That is how part of triangulation, there's a lot more to it than that. And there's a lot more scenarios that can play out. But that is part of how it works. So when you find yourself completely surrounded with indifference, please come back to yourself and be honest about your reactions and responses, and be honest about your own resolved emotions. If you feel hurt, acknowledge it. If you feel scared, acknowledge it. That is the power that you'll have. The more you hold to the truth of what you're observing, the more you'll deal with what is occurring. You may not like the outcome. The results may be far from what you wanted, but you'll know that you held to the truth of yourself. And that is part of spirituality. Thank you for listening. If you want more information and enjoying the content, enjoying the journaling, please like and subscribe. We're trying to build the channel.